The idea of burial in Christianity is indirectly affecting, probably even mentally, psychologically, and emotionally killing more people without realizing. Why would people say that burial can actually kill? Well, you see, life is far more complex than most people would agree. And obviously, ignorant people will probably disagree because, well, unfortunately, we're all raised in ignorance. And when you become one, everything that you can see around you is basically the whole world. And it's hard to accept something beyond. See, the point is, we've been ignored. We've been made to ignore the idea and the possibility that, you can simply um, go through multiple lifetimes. Now, this isn't necessarily an important thing because, well, you see, nature has a very important barrier, right? You never remember anything regarding your previous lives. You may have dreams and the such, they may feel very vivid, but still you don't know whether they are truly things from previous lives or they are very powerful beasts of imagination. Never ever underestimate the power of your mind, especially if you're simple minded, because the more untrained the mind is, the more power it has to convince you that whatever it produces, it is real. That is the power of the mind. Whatever it creates, it can create in such a way that you will feel it is indistinguishable from reality. Now, in Christianity, there is always this aspect that when you bury the dead, you always must feel sad, right? And this lower vibration must also be coupled with that which kills most people, indirectly, obviously, that of wearing black. Now, obviously, there is nothing, well, there is actually a lot of things towards wearing black. Now in society, a sick society will always promote sickness, right? Wearing black is in a way promoting sickness. Not because black is bad, but you see, black and white are non-colors. And spiritually speaking and energetically speaking, black is a non-color, right? And white as well. Now, when it comes to colors, everything that we see is basically not what we see, right? When we see something, a color, right? That color is so because it is bounced off of the surface of something, right? And so basically, if I see something which is red, right? The point is, it's technically not red because that red has bounced off of the surface of that object. So the colors that I'm seeing are basically the result of reflection, right? The spectrum of light bounces a bit of it, right? A bit of it is bounced off by all the surfaces it simply interacts with. So technically, all the colors that we see, we cannot see them if the light is not bounced off, right? That is why, for example, black holes, if they don't have energy, that they gorge upon, they are impossible to spot because, well, not even light escapes them. So that's why we call them black, right? This is no measure of, racism or whatever things may pop up in humans, right? Especially miserable ones who will probably try to seek anything that they can latch upon, right? And, pull you down. Now, the point about this is very simple. Black means, well, an all-around attractor, right? When you see an object that it is black, right? This non-color is the result of, light absorbing most, right, of the light spectrum. Still, you can see you can see the object, so not 100% of the light was absorbed, but, most of it was absorbed. If something is white, for example, this non-color means that it simply bounced all the colors, right? Now, the light has millions of colors, right, in its spectrum, and the human eye can perceive less than 1% of that light. So technically, we're kind of blind in this universe, right? That's what science says. At the same time, this is the reason why we don't see ghosts and all sorts of, things that are beyond our visual spectrum. Let's not forget, less than 1% of the spectrum of light. Obviously, this includes ultraviolet and all sorts of other types, but the point is less than 1% that we can perceive normally, right? Well, that's a lot. Now, again, you can perceive ghosts and similar events through your gut feeling, and especially the more compact they are, they can be perceived, but let's not mingle much about these because many people will probably, have their minds lost in this idea and they'll start fantasizing too much. And fantasy, well, if it is done consciously, well, it is useful, especially if you're using it for writing something or for doing something, but just spending time fantasizing without achieving or going in any direction in life, that's in a way losing time because it takes for all of us. So when it comes to the color black, well, if it absorbs light, well, light is an energy form, right? Light is a form of energy, just like everything that is physical in this world. Light can be perceived as physical. It is physical. And, well, if we think about, light, light is a vibration, right? That is why you can perceive it as heat. If you go outside, you perceive the heat of the sun, right? That is the result of the burning events that go on around, right, within the layers of the sun, and we can perceive the heat as well as, the light of the sun. Even if you are blind, if you are sensitive enough, you can know where the sun and the moon are on the sky. You don't necessarily need to see them. So when it comes to black, black as a non-color simply attracts more than just all the colors around. It also absorbs all the vibrations possible. It is like a sponge. So the point is, when you wear black, why do you think this sick society promotes wearing black? It gives you a certain sense of power, but at the same time it costs you your life. Why? Because you're technically a sponge of all the people's energy. You're a far greater sponge of people's energy. And especially if you're a sensitive person, the problem is you're gonna absorb a lot of energy from people. Given the fact that we live in a sick society of ignorance, this means you'll be attracting a lot of misery. Now imagine that you're going at a burial. Well, all the fake people most likely will be there, and there will be some people you may care about, but the point is everyone is going to be sorrowful and miserable and the such, and the accent will be a lot on that, right? Especially think about all the people who never cared about that person while they were alive and suddenly they feel like caring, right? All this nonsense, all this theater, all these are energies, right? And you're gonna absorb them because it's black, and all those people are gonna share it in between them. So misery is so shared in between people just because they wear black, right? Do you think the people who created and invented religion, especially Christianity, do you think they did all of these like out of sheer improbability? Like, do you think all of these aspects were decided so without any reason or without any knowledge? No. If they created something as hideous as religion and the ways that it costs humanity their well-being, and, well, best said, their life as well, because a life not lived in well-being is a life of misery. A life of misery, well, is basically a life of sorrowness, a life of, loss, right? An unexamined life. And it was a quote that said the unexamined life is not worth living. That's why many people feel worthless, right? They're not feeling anything in life and they're always absorbing other people's misery. When you go to a burial, it's exactly that which you are doing. And you're also staying close to a corpse, right? That physical body has lost the capability to support, life itself. So life itself is leaving, and instead it's leaving a lot of energies that are simply dissipating. Who's gonna absorb all those energies? Well, everyone who's close around and wearing black. So basically you're feeding yourself with death, and then you're probably gonna wonder why you're feeling like shit. Well, this could be a possible answer. Now, I'm not blaming burials themselves, right? But this habit goes to show that people are so ignorant about the energies that there are around. And then people wonder why their environment pulls them down so easily? Well, you need to wear more black, right? Be careful about the colors that you wear. It's not that they speak a lot about you subconsciously, but they can cost you a lot. Because if you draw a lot of misery in your life, you might say, well, it doesn't kill me. Well, it kind of kills you because instead of fighting for you, or instead of aiding you one way or another, those energies will constantly pull you down. Let's not forget the auras of people around you. Let's not forget your own thousands of lifetimes that you lived before and you've been pulled down by people, right? Let's not forget that in order to inhabit a physical body, you also have ancestral karma. So you have the behaviors of all your forefathers and foremothers within you. Just let yourself slip into unconsciousness for a bit, and you will see all the bad habits crawl back at you. You may not be a drunkard naturally, but there's definitely people that, karmically there have existed in your lineage, right? Or better said, yes, as forefathers and foremothers who had problems with that, right? You may not be predisposed to such energies based on your own karma, but, there are always gonna be vices that will simply crawl back up at you the moment you slip into unconsciousness. Because that is the greatest problem with Christianity. It never teaches people how to dispose of the dead. And the dead are extremely powerful because the dead keep existing and living through us. See, all their bad habits, everything that they couldn't transcend was simply transmitted to the next generations. And this is very important to understand because the point is, they're not coming back like in movies to haunt you. They're not coming back at you to simply punish you. They've lived their life and they're long gone, right? But everything regarding their older times, right? All that we have in this society, from racism to whatever hideousness, whatever form of separation we have, all of this, well, is the result of our ancestors, right? They did the best that they could, but their awareness was much smaller. And many of them, especially throughout our history, in the medieval times, in ancient times, they thought that their religion is the best thing, that they thought that their society is the best thing, they thought that their thoughts are the best thing. So obviously they would always fight for something, right? So that is why all of these things are deeply entrenched within us. It's not that we invented, a hatred towards all the things that we hate nowadays. They are deeply entrenched within us. And since we are ignorant, we don't have any natural blockers towards those because we don't allow us to. Right? When you're ignorant, you simply allow all energies to flow through you. That is why ignorance kills the most people. Because it doesn't have to pop up like something and kill you, like stab you or something, right? This is a much worse murder, right? Because if something would stab you, you'd struggle a bit, but at least you'd die quickly, right? But when it comes to misery and ignorance, well, it kills you at a certain age, usually at around 18 to 20 years, when you become, what I call an adult, or better said, a zombie, and you give up the miracleness of childhood, and you're no longer curious, you're no longer playful, right? You become just a ball of misery. Well, that's basically when you died. The rest is just a physical body, constantly, tempered with by the urges of, society, the urges of your physical body, urges that, well, belong to, like, all the people who also lived behind, right? To live, all those who simply lived before you, right? Because everything that they could not transcend, they simply sent to the next generation. That is why it is very difficult to live as a human, because you have a huge amount of generational karma, right? You may not know who 5 generations, the people 5 generations before you looked like, but definitely you may have some of their habits. And the moment you slip into, let's say unconsciousness, there is always some sort of, fetish. There is always some sort of thoughts that don't naturally belong to you, but they will creep back at you. And you're going to wonder how and why you simply can't transcend those things, right? Many people even say that, they're going to be much better than their parents. But there will be certain ages when, well, because of ignorance, all the karma they have accumulated from previous lifetimes, and especially the karma of their ancestors, will simply crawl back in. The only way to transcend this is to simply live life consciously, because when you are conscious, you are taking full control of your energies and of literally everything. If not, well, all the impulses of nature will simply try to take over you. None of your ancestors, none of those people is coming back from the dead. They are probably living other lives, or they are still sorting through their karma to be allowed to simply reincarnate. But they are handling their own thing. They are no longer having any, link with you. Other than that, all the actions that they have made, they have simply left a karmic imprint. And that karmic imprint exists within all of us, right? If we have in our DNAs the history of the whole universe, well, the point is, imagine all those influences, all those events that happened in the whole universe, right? That karmic imprint is within all of us. That is what technically the history of the universe means. And the history of you, who you are, that's also the same thing. So the point is, we all have within us all those impulses of our ancestors. It is very important to know this. And when you open yourself through ignorance to them, they will simply come back at you and latch at you, right? And that's why you have so many people suffering. They don't know why. We don't know how to dispose of the dead. The Eastern societies seem to be a lot wiser because they would place a greater accent on severing those ties with the dead people, right? As I said, they don't come back at you to simply haunt you or punish you, as you see in a lot of literature that's been poisoning the minds of people and their understanding of what lies beyond. But those energies left around and, well, basically within you by the dead, they're extremely, if not one of the hardest to simply strip from your life. That is why ignorance is so hard to also deal with, because you have thousands of generations of such behavior within you. That is why it is so easy to simply slip in. And, well, point is, you also have so many people around you doing that, and probably, well, most people get used to the fact that, well, you can't do literally anything else. That is why without enough spiritual development, without much spiritual background, many people simply easily fall for that because they're just like moles. Any idea, anything, any behavior simply shapes them because they don't have a foundation to establish, way of life, personal and aware, right? A conscious way of being, where they understand how influences, well, happen around them, right? Because many people say, well, it's just energy. Well, energy can be very dangerous if you don't know how to handle it. Imagine the energy of your parents and your grandparents, right? What you see at them is something that you're going to carry with you. If your mother tells you at least once that you're useless and you believe it, well, even psychology says what your mother tells you, it's going to be almost impossible to simply go beyond that, right? If your mother teaches you only bad things, and as a woman you're teaching your child, you're telling them all sorts of miserable things, it's going to be almost impossible for them to simply transcend that. Add also 1,000 of generations, if not more, before your child that, their ancestors went through, right? And imagine how hard it would be to simply transcend all that misery, all that negativity. Then you go to, a burial, you wear black, or you simply go through your society, day by day, and you absorb all the people's misery. Well, guess what's that? Their current state of misery, as well as that of, the accumulated misery of their ancestors as well. Because, well, especially if you spend a lot of time around those, right? Not because you simply are around someone, but you shake hands with someone, that's definitely an exchange of energy, right? It takes a longer time, several minutes usually, if you sit or stay around people. But, corporate work is all about wearing black and, sitting in, groups of people, and, you just waste time with all sorts of discussions and the such. Well, hopefully this video was introspective enough, and, well, you are appreciated. Keep understanding and learning things about you and who you are. And hopefully people will realize that life is not about just going on, headlessly. Life is far more than simply that. You are appreciated. Take care. Ferenc Board signing out.